So, what if I told you that most of what you're communicating, well, it isn't actually coming out of your mouth? Today, we're going to dive into that silent, powerful language we all speak, sometimes without even realizing it. We're talking about nonverbal communication. You know the feeling, right? We've all been there. You ask someone a question, they say yes, but your gut just sinks. Something about their tone, the way they're standing, it just screams no. That weird, conflicted feeling, that's exactly what we're going to decode today. And that's because a lot of the time, our bodies are telling a way more honest story than our words ever could. So what is this stuff really? Well, simply put, nonverbal communication is everything we say without speaking. It's kind of like the secret language of our actions, and it can either back up what we're saying or it can completely betray it. Getting a handle on this is an absolute game changer for becoming a better communicator. Okay, so how do we even start to understand this silent language? It really boils down to three main types. Let's start with the one we're probably most familiar with. First up, facial expressions. I mean, think about the last time you tried to hide that you were disappointed with a gift. Your face totally gave you away, didn't it? Our faces are pretty much broadcasting our true feelings 24/7. And that broadcast is incredibly powerful. Just imagine telling a friend some really bad news, and they just smile. Right? Instantly, the whole conversation is completely thrown off. Their expression didn't just confuse you, it totally undermined whatever they were trying to say.
But it's not just our faces doing all the heavy lifting. Let's move on to our second type, gestures. Think of these as your communication backup plan. You know, when you're in a loud bar and want to order 2 drinks, you don't scream, you just hold up 2 fingers. It's an essential tool when words just can't cut through the noise. But here's a word of warning. That simple thumbs up that means okay here in Canada, well, in other parts of the world, it's actually a serious insult. So yeah, these signals are definitely not universal. When it comes to gestures, you got to remember that context is everything.
And that brings us to our third and probably biggest category, body language. Now, this is the whole shebang. We're talking about communicating with your entire posture, from the way you stand to even the direction your feet are pointing. This is often where you can really tell if someone is open or closed to what you're saying. Open body language, making eye contact, arms relaxed at their sides, that's basically an invitation to connect. But crossed arms and looking away, that's a wall. It's a loud and clear signal that someone might not be on the same page. All right, so that's the theory. But let's see how this stuff actually plays out and makes a huge difference in the real world. Okay, let's meet Dina and her new coworker, Yuri. Now, Yuri just arrived from Russia, and he's still getting the hang of English, so there's a pretty clear communication barrier right off the bat. So Dina asks him to do something with a couple of steps. To an English speaker, her words are perfectly clear, but to Yuri, it's pretty much just noise. He's completely and totally understandably confused. So, what does Dina do? She shifts gears. First, she makes eye contact to really connect with him. Then, she holds up 2 fingers. She points directly at the boxes he needs to move. And finally, she points outside towards the truck. It's a perfect wordless instruction. And boom! Success! Yuri gets it immediately, moves the right boxes, and they share a smile and a thumbs up. Dina completely bridged that language gap using nothing but nonverbal cues. Pretty cool, right? But what happens when there isn't a language barrier and things still feel off? Let's look at what happens when someone's words and body are sending completely different signals. So here we have Greg, a bank manager, and he's asking one of his tellers, Jalen, to cover an extra shift. Seems like a pretty standard workplace request. Jalen's actual words are, yeah, I guess, which, is technically a yes, but his body is screaming no. He crosses his arms, he looks away. This is a classic mixed message. His mouth is saying one thing, but his body is telling the real story. Now, a less observant manager might have just heard the yes and walked away. But Greg is paying attention. He sees that conflict between the words and the body language, and he asks a really simple clarifying question. He gives Jalen an out, a chance to say what's really going on. And just like that, the truth comes out. Jalen actually has a family thing he can't miss. By reading those nonverbal cues and just asking one simple question, Greg didn't just fix a scheduling issue. He showed Jalen that he's a manager who actually listens and cares. That's huge. When you really stop and think about it, understanding all this stuff, it's not just a nice little skill to have. It's basically a communication superpower. So how do you get this superpower for yourself?
It really comes down to this simple toolkit. First, you have to actually pay attention. Really watch what people are doing, not just what they're saying. Then, learn to spot those moments when the words and the actions just don't line up. And finally, and this is the most important part, when you see that mismatch, don't just ignore it. Ask questions. Dig a little deeper to find out what's really going on.
Because at the end of the day, great communication isn't just about what you say, it's about everything you do. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What are your actions really saying?